There's only 1 week to go before the American midterm elections.
There's only 1 week left until Election Day. I can't believe it.
There are just 7 days until the midterm election.
America is divided.
America is on edge.
The intensity of the political drama is overshadowed by the sadness of the attempted postal bombings and the deadly mass shooting at a synagogue in Pittsburgh.
But this is a time for us to come together as a nation.
The events of the last week are disturbing and heartbreaking.
The mood of America is angry.
And one of fear.
The events of the last week were shocking and frightening and show that there's a real need to put civility back into politics.
But a lot will be clear in just a very short time.
My advice to voters is to actually vote. I did today.
And to make sure you take someone with you to the polls.
My advice to candidates is to not leave anything on the field.
Don't let these weapons of mass distractions take you off your game.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Brown James, and I'm a proud Democrat.
I'm Jay Shabria, Republican strategist.
I'm Patty Solis Doyle. I'm a Democratic strategist.
My name is David Frum. I've been involved in Republican politics all my adult life.
So thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us again. You know, with 1 week to go, I really didn't expect the tone to be what it is right now. And I know you're all on different sides of the political spectrum, but you're all Americans. And the violence of the last couple weeks, you know, the pipe bombs, especially the murders at the synagogue in Pittsburgh, your country's been through a lot. As your neighbors, you know, we sincerely feel for you. And it makes talking about the midterms a little uncomfortable. And so I guess to start off, I'm wondering to what extent all this has changed the political conversation there. David?
I think it's driven, especially the murders in the synagogue, have driven a concern about the gun issue that has been, I think, a sleeper issue, especially for a lot of the women voters who are already very concerned about President Trump. And I think it's raised the intensity and moral feeling behind this election. Something seems very wrong in the country, and these terrible events underscore it. There has to, one distinction I think needs to be drawn between the pipe bombing and the synagogue murders. The pipe bomber really does seem to have been quite directly inspired by President Trump. He was a person who was not political before 2016, was politicized by the Trump campaign, and his targets were people who had been singled out by name by President Trump for attack. The synagogue shooter seems to have been responding much more to general background noises of hatred and anti-Semitism than to any specific incitement.
Stephanie, you know, because you run a political action committee and you're endorsing several candidates, I'm wondering what has changed in style or substance for them coming out of this?
You know, sadly, I think that we continue to see the same uncivility in our political discourse, especially from Republicans, but also, to me, a little bit too much silence from Democrats. The last week was stressful, it was hurtful. I mean, there's so many Americans who continue to be concerned about how they live their everyday lives, especially candidates, who many of them are now beefing up their security even more than they have before. And so I think, you know, unfortunately, while we saw people grieve and while we saw politicians and candidates take a pause to commemorate the victims and talk about how they would ramp down some of the viciousness that we've seen in our political discourse, it doesn't seem to have lasted longer than a week. And it seems as if it's almost business as usual. And to a certain degree, I understand, you know, we have candidates who are continuing to run their races, who are looking forward to the next 7 days being over. But I really hope that we will see a real shift in how we talk about issues that unify us and that divide us, and understand that we're all Americans and we really need to come together in this time right now.
Jay, do you buy that in terms of shifts in the language around campaigning with the Republicans?
Well, I don't know that things are going to really shift that much. I think we as a society have become desensitized to these types of tragedies. So candidates right now, as they're going through their final elections exercises, they're trying to find the right words and trying to find the right tone, trying to find the right balance. But then it is business as usual, as Stephanie said, because at the end of the day, we have an election that's coming up next Tuesday. And one of the great things about our democracy is that no matter what happens, we still go to the polls and vote. And there's a lot of efficacy to that. So I don't know that much is going to change from this, but these are just horrible events.
Okay, so they are. We have heard your president refer to these midterms in some ways as being about the caravan, you know, this group of thousands of people who are still arguably weeks away from being anywhere near the U.S. border. Patty, I'm wondering how this is landing with the Democrats. I have this impression that they sort of see this as just a craven political move.
Yeah, the president has chosen to close on the caravan for the midterm elections. And he's done it because, it worked for him in the past. That's how he closed his message in the 2016 race, and he was successful, and he's hoping to do it again this time around. But the things that he's offering up to the American people are pure political stunts. First of all, sending 5,200 troops to the border, as you mentioned. The caravan is still 1,000 miles away, nowhere near the border yet. It doesn't pose a threat to national security. And the caravan is comprised of primarily women and children seeking, asylum. They're fleeing danger, they're fleeing poverty, they're fleeing, they're in fear for their lives, and they're seeking asylum. They really don't pose a threat to national security either. And then today, in an interview with Axios, he said that he is looking at eliminating the birthright citizenship through executive order. Well, he just can't do that. It is constitutional, and he single-handedly cannot undo the Constitution. So these things are really political stunts, and he's just looking through his barrel of weapons of mass distraction is what he's doing to change the subject from what has been a horrific, sad week.
David, do you think the Democrats lose something, though, by dismissing this as political stunts, or Stephanie said, staying silent on some issues?
I think they really do. I would agree that, look, there is a lot of stunt to what the president is doing with the caravan. October, in addition to being the month of these terrible atrocities, and let's not forget the killing of those two older black people in the parking lot of a Kentucky supermarket by a white supremacist who made it very clear that he specifically targeted them because of their race. In fact, he spared a white person by said whites don't kill whites. So it's been a sad week. It's also been the worst month in the financial markets since 2009. But the caravan is a real issue. 2018 is seeing illegal immigration running at the same pace as it ran in the quite high year of 2016. And what people from Central America who want to move to the United States have figured out is if you bring a minor child with you, you will be able to make an asylum claim. The irony with President Trump trying to make an issue of it is he has done nothing to address this problem. What will happen is these people will arrive at the border, and there will be soldiers there, and then they will set foot on American soil, arrive at a checkpoint, and say, I'd like to make an asylum claim. And then, under the law that President Trump has not changed, they will have to be admitted into the United States and then released into the interior of the country, pending the adjudication of their claim. And when their claim comes up, they will never show up again. And that is a problem that was true under President Obama. It's a problem that continues under Donald Trump. And we're seeing more and more of this illegal entry through the use of asylum claims. It's not the country's most important problem, but it's a real thing. And we have seen Democrats being driven by their opposition to Donald Trump to a very radical position on immigration, where they are arriving at a point where enforcing the border at all is something that they now regard as completely morally unacceptable. That's a bad place from a policy point of view. It's also not great politics.
Okay, so I don't know if you know this, but recently in Canada, we've seen a rise in the use of terms like fake news, lamestream media, some shouts of lock her up, referring to some Canadian politicians here. And the worry, of course, is about the nasty political rhetoric, swelling north. And I wonder, with the benefit of hindsight, is there something you think Canadians in politics and the media can do to just keep the political conversations constructive and civil? Stephanie, let's start with you.
I think it's really important for us to make sure that we hold media accountable, that we hold politicians accountable, to say, look, report on real issues that are impacting Americans. Don't give credence to small issues or stories that may seem entertaining, but in reality are distracting voters from what's really important. And we have to call people to the carpet on these issues to make sure that we're getting the facts that we deserve.
Patty, do you think there was a moment you can point to when the discourse in the United States took a downward turn that you regret really wasn't stopped in its tracks?
Well, I think there were two. First of all, in 2016, the moment that Donald Trump set foot on the political stage as a candidate, he came down that escalator in Trump Tower and in his announcement speech proclaimed that Mexicans were rapists and criminals. And at that point, for the most part, the political intelligentsia said, this guy is a political joke. He's not going anywhere. Let's not make much of this. The second moment, I think, that really spoke to me in that race was the moment that Marco Rubio decided to get into the gutter with Donald Trump and making reference to his small hands. And that's when sort of mainstream politicians and the formidable candidates decided that they were going to get in the mud, in the gutter with Donald Trump. And what we've learned now is that no one wins on that platform with Donald Trump. He is the best at that, and it just doesn't, it's not a successful way to go at him.
Jay, I'm listening to this, and I completely hear you, Patty, but I'm also wondering if Republicans are saying, why did Hillary Clinton take the bait and refer to them as deplorables?
Oh, Hillary Clinton made a huge mistake that day, right? I mean, look, we can go back and we can look at all the mistakes candidates make. I was there for a lot of those debates, and it was very difficult. It's almost like you're a boxer, and all of a sudden, for the first time, you see a left-handed boxer, and you just don't know what to do, and you're shadow boxing. And Democrats continue to make the same mistake. And look, the caravan is one of them too. We talked about it a little earlier, and our panelists are right. The caravan represents something bigger. It represents this need in this country to say there's something not fair about the way immigration is done. It hasn't been done for a long time. And what they see in Donald Trump is someone that's saying, they may not agree with the tactics, they may not agree with the rhetoric, but they say, well, at least he's doing something. So the average American voter says, okay, well, there's a guy that's doing something. I don't know that's going to work, but no one else has tried it. No one else has tried to do anything that's real, and nothing stuck. So that he's going to get a ton of credit from there, for his actions, from independents, from Democrats, from conservative Democrats, and it's going to bode well for him in this midterm election, because right now, in this midterm election, Donald Trump is not as toxic as we once thought he might be. Democrats may still win the House back, but it's not going to be by the margins that we once thought it could be. And that's a very interesting phenomenon to me.
Okay, David, on this point, one last thought to you on this point. Constructively for Canadians, is there anything you can advise? We're heading into an election year fairly soon.
Yeah, there really is, and here's what I would say. Those of us of a certain age, those of us who care about politics a lot, when we say the media, we mean the CBC, we mean newspapers, we mean institutions that exist, that think of news provision as their business. By far the most important media company in the world is Facebook. Number 2, YouTube. WhatsApp has now emerged as number 3. That's the ecosystem in which people who are much more lightly connected to the political system are getting disinformation, false information, and aggressively deceptive information. Look, we all have criticisms about what we see from news gathering organizations, but if you're focused on that, you're focused on the wrong thing, because those are the people with antibodies. The information sources that are deceiving the people with weaker antibodies are on Facebook and YouTube.
Okay, thanks everyone, good point. Listen, 1 week tonight, Stephanie, you'll be with your candidate Andrew Gillum in Florida. The rest of you lucky ducks will be right here. I'm not telling you where I'm going, moderator's privilege, but we'll see you next week.